Welcome, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and start my announcements, and we have a lot of people registered for this Zoom, so we hope they'll continue coming in over the next few minutes. Thanks for attending the La Plata Democrats Club Luncheon, which we've had on Zoom all this time. And this summer, we might be doing it in person, having a brown bag lunch somewhere. We'll let you know. The goal of the club is to bring together all Democrats from the most conservative to the most progressive to celebrate our shared values and appreciate who we are and work together to put more Democrats in office. I'd like to acknowledge our club lunch sponsor, Albrechta and Albrechta Law. They've been supporting this luncheon for several years now. If you need legal help, please think about Albrechta and Albrechta here in Durango. Our program today will feature the candidates for Durango City Council. The procedure is everyone's asked to stay muted except for the speakers, myself, and Gwen Unger, who's going to be helping with questions. If you want to submit a question different from the ones we are asking during the lunch, please use the chat feature on Zoom. Please do not unmute yourself and speak, because this is going to be chaotic as it is with five candidates. Send your questions to everyone in the chat window, and we definitely will monitor the chat. If you're having trouble with internet connectivity, if maybe we tell you you're coming in weird or whatever, you can disable your video. Go down to the bottom where it says stop video, bottom left. And audio only sometimes works better on slower connections. This Zoom meeting is being recorded and it'll be available within a day or so for viewing. It'll be on YouTube. You can choose speaker mode, which is typically in the upper right corner, which will bring up a larger video of the person speaking if you don't want to look at this gallery of all of us. I would like to encourage everyone, while they're thinking about it, to donate to the La Plata County Dems in this non-election year. It keeps our office rented and we can accumulate funds ahead of the need for next year. Monthly donations are particularly appreciated, and you can set those up on ActBlue. Monthly donations make it easy for you to give to the party with relatively little pain. This is our second club lunch for 2023. The committee is working hard to bring some great programs for this year. We have a Zoom every month on the first Tuesday at noon. We may switch to brown bag lunches in person this summer, so watch your email for information. If anyone has any other announcements to make, you can enter something in the chat window and we'll recognize you at the end of the lunch. The candidates for City Council are Harrison Wendt, Gilda Yazzie, Dave Woodruff, Carter Rogers, and Doug Snow. We used a randomizer to call on them, so I have a list that we already did in random order. They each have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, so I won't do that at this time. And they'll have 2 minutes to answer each question. Okay, if there's time left over after all the questions and their closing statement, we can entertain questions from the audience. The first candidate, I'm going to hit send, okay, in the chat. Our first question is, what personal traits and skill sets do you believe are critical for city councilors to possess to best serve your community? Which of those do you believe are your greatest strength? And actually, I jumped the gun, I'm sorry. Give me your opening statements first. Let's do opening statements, by which you will probably cover that, but that's going to be your first question. So the first one is Harrison Wendt.
Hello, everyone. My name is Harrison Wendt. First, I saw that my grandma came in here and I want to give her a big shout out because she is my lifeline and I love her dearly, and that means so much. Even though she can't vote in this election, having her support means everything. And then I want to thank the club and La Plata Democrats for organizing this event. The importance of community and civic engagement is incredibly high, and it's a crucial part of our democracy. I also want to thank all the folks who are watching this. Your vote matters, and taking the time to learn about candidates is important. And a special shout out and kudos to the candidates who have entered this race and made themselves available to be public servants. For the last 6 years, I have called Durango home, and this community has been instrumental to my growth, development, and advancement as a young adult. Durango has beautiful landscapes and amazing outdoor recreation, It also boasts a compassionate community that strives to make our city thrive through inclusivity and sustainability. I had hoped to find a welcoming community when I relocated to Durango. That's exactly what I found. And I also found a passion to serve the people of Durango and the city of Durango. As your city councilor, I plan to bring my core beliefs of compassion, community, trust, and accountability and collaboration to the role. It's time for compassionate governing on Durango City Council. Our working people, young and old, are struggling to live here, and our on-house neighbors are living without shelter and dignity, and the cost of living has burdened so many of our residents. We all know our core workers, hospital, education, tourism, and safety are struggling. And the question is, how can we help them live here? And our city council hasn't benefited from younger voices for years, although residents under the age of 35 comprise such an important part of our economy. I'll bring a fresh perspective and a new generation of leadership to Durango City Council.
That was a well-timed 2 minutes. I forgot to mention my husband Kirby is our timer, and he will hold up at 30 seconds and a stop. And if you miss it, I'll just say, hey, time's up. So our next candidate is Dave Woodruff, opening statement. Make sure you're unmuted and we'll start the clock over.
You think it's my first Zoom meeting? Holy smoke. Sorry about that, everyone. My name is Dave Woodruff, and I'm running for Durango City Council. I'll also give a shout out to my family in Kansas watching from abroad. So they can't vote, but it feels good to be able to have the support of family outside of the state. Regardless, thank you to the club and the Plata Democrats for holding this forum today. This gives us as candidates the ability to speak to the local and regional issues at hand and our perspectives on those issues. More importantly, this gives you all as the audience the ability to see where we lean on certain issues and gives you the information needed to make an informed decision at the ballot box. While we'll get into the meat of the issues in just a little bit, I will give you the reasons that I think I make a good fit as a candidate to fill one of the city council seats. First off, I've been an engaged member of this community since 2005 when I decided to call Durango home. Since then, I've worked on the front lines in the hospitality industry where I've garnered great insight on how to run a business in Durango and La Plata County, but also working alongside our vibrant workforce and understanding their challenges to living and thriving in Durango. Having lived and worked in this community for the last 18 plus years gives me perspective on what's important to Durango and understanding what our values are and why we live here. Leadership and leadership development is a mantle I hold too dearly and have cultivated through the years of living in Durango. Secondly, having worked in the restaurant industry for the past 18 years in Durango, hospitality is always front of mind when thinking about community engagement. If you've ever had the opportunity to come into someplace I've worked, you are always made to feel welcome by myself and my staff. This is intentional, and through hospitality, we are able to find common ground with everyone in our community. It is my hope that once I get into city council, I can implement this common ground approach and work with everyone on council to work towards what is best for all of us living here. We will not always agree, that's given, but we can give one another the grace and respect to not agree on everything, but conduct ourselves with diplomacy and compassion. Lastly, I've worked hard to operate in our community with integrity and transparency. Having been on numerous boards and commissions, I have a rounded viewpoint on the issues that impact our corner of the state. From housing to economic development, I've been a part of those conversations and will work hard to represent our vision of Durango now and in the future. Thank you all for being here today, and I look forward to discussing the issues that are important to all of us.
Okay, great. The next one, Gilda Yazzie, opening statement. Make sure you're unmuted, Gilda, and we'll start over.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay,
good.
thank you. Thank you for holding the forum. My name is Gilda Yazzie, and I'm running for Durango City Council to help keep our community moving forward. Durango is facing many difficult and complex issues. I believe my professional background and experience will contribute to city leadership and discussions, plus decision-making. I am Danae Navajo. I was raised in a large indigenous family and learned traditional family values. I have been a longtime Durango resident. I graduated from Fort Lewis College with a business degree. I've also lived in Washington, D.C., where I worked on Capitol Hill on women's rights and racial equality issues. I took time off between my careers to care for my mother before she passed. I volunteered with Habitat of Humanity on Durango's Historic Preservation Board and La Plata County's Undesirable Plants and Weed and Rodent Committee. My father has instilled in me the love of the outdoors, and I enjoy skiing, fly fishing, and hiking. I am ready to get to work on addressing the issues facing Durango, including but not limited to affordable housing, homelessness, infrastructure, and parking. I am passionate about preserving historic downtown Durango while making safety improvements. I look forward to serving as a role model for our youth and ensuring we protect our land, air, water for future generations. I look forward to earning your vote on April 4th. Thank you.
You're muted, Karen.
I know, I just saw that. Our next opening statement from Carter Rogers. I'll just.
Sweet. Can you all hear me all right? Awesome. Perfect. I'd also just like to express thanks to the club and to the La Plata Dems for hosting today's forum. And with that, my name is Carter Rogers. I'm 21 years old and I'm a candidate for Durango City Council. And I'm running for Durango City Council because the needs of our Durango residents and community have been pushed aside in lieu of interest of the tourist industry here in Durango. And that stops with our campaign. So what do I bring to the table, and why should you vote for a 21-year-old candidate like me? I'm a firm believer in transparency and openness, especially from our elected officials. And this is something we can be especially critical of with our current city leaders and city council, as they will be meeting today, actually, in executive session to discuss the plan of action in regards to an open records lawsuit that the city lost pertaining to 2021 draft financial statements. But as a leader, I believe that our citizens and residents of Durango are competent and intelligent, and that if they do get those materials, they will be able to review and hold our elected officials accountable, despite whatever contents of those documents contain. And further, it's important that our city leaders focus on their constituency here in Durango more than special interests and the tourist industry. I'd also like to note that one candidate here at this forum today does sit on the Visit Durango Marketing Committee. But however, as your next counselor, I'll be sure to act on what I've already heard from our Durango community and bring the focus back to our families and individuals within Durango. So it's important now more than ever that we bring the focus back to our Durango individuals and community. And you can rest assured I'll put your interests first, not the big monies. Thank you.
Thank you, Carter. Good timing. Our next candidate is Doug Snow. Opening statement, please.
Hello, my name is Douglas Snow. I was born and raised here in Durango, Colorado. I went to school here. I was in 4-H, Boy Scouts. In 4-H, I raised and bred rabbits, and for many different years, I won the Grand Champion Show for the open class and for 4-H, and won Grand Champion Show, Reserve Grand Champion Show, Grand Champion Meat Pin, and went through the auction at fair with my livestock. Since being in 4-H, I have worked many different jobs in the community. So I have a diverse knowledge of the community, different types of businesses, from construction to retail to food industry. And I feel that I have a very diverse background that I can offer to city council to help shape Durango for years to come. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And that's all 5 have given opening statements. Our first question's in the chat, and it is, what personal traits and skill sets do you believe are critical for our counselors to possess to best serve community? Some of you have already talked about that. This is just an opportunity for you to expand on that. Which of those do you believe are your greatest strengths? 2 minutes each. Oh, let's see. Okay, Doug or Gwen, you said to start with the second one. Dave Woodruff, you're up first.
All right, thank you so much. So to answer that question, I'll kind of go back to what Carter said. Somebody on this commission is indeed on the marketing committee, and it's me for Visit Durango. Transparency and integrity, I think, are critical parts of what I bring to the city council. I've worked hard over the last 18 years to really put myself into all those conversations within Durango to get a well-rounded perspective of what's going on inside our community and what those community-wide impacts are across everybody. And so 30% of our economy is based upon tourism. I think we should know what it is that takes to run and market our region to everybody else. You know, it's a pretty competitive market out there, and I think it's important that we diversify our economy, but we can't just throw away 30% of it at the same time. So having that perspective of knowing what it takes to market Durango and having a part of those conversations about the direction in which we go, I think is critically important. So and again, you know, being coming in through the pandemic over the last 3 years, being a voice and an advocate in Durango for the restaurant scene, the hospitality scene, for even, you know, whatever sort of outlier industries and sectors that could benefit from what we were able to glean throughout the entirety of the pandemic. So being a strong advocate for Durango and La Plata County, I think is a really critically important aspect of what somebody should be in city council. I think I've done a really good job over the last 3 years, because we don't always get a seat at the table at the statewide conversation. So having somebody be able to be in front of our regional and state and even federal officials to be able to ensure that we have a seat at the table and have our voice be heard, I think is critically important. Thank you.
Excellent. Gilda, first question. And you guys can see the chat, right? Okay, I put the second question up too soon, but whatever. Go ahead, Gilda.
All right, the personal traits and skills that I believe are critical for our city councilors to possess to best serve our community. I believe my life experience can contribute to city leadership and discussions, because I grew up in a large family where I had to learn how to negotiate family politics. Everybody has to try to present their issue and get along and move everything forward as a group. So I think group dynamics, be able to work with different individuals, different personalities, and still move forward is very critical to the city council. I also think that my dedication and commitment to creating a world where our youth can freely contribute and be part of the discussion is critical. Being like in a matriarchal society that I grew up in, it's up to the women to nurture the youth to come along and participate fully in our families, in our society, in life in general. So I feel that my experience nurturing people like that will help aid future generations. And also my ability to listen clearly to people. I believe that helps foster a good sense of communication, because I believe that if we can communicate clearly and listen to each other, that's going to move all our processes and the structure of the city forward to create a place where we truly enjoy living. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Carter, question 1.
Sweet. So in my positions, of leadership over the past few years, specifically back when I worked for the city of Ralston back in Oklahoma. One of the biggest things I learned, and I think is key to being a great leader, is listening. Listening and being able to sit down and let other people know that you're hearing their stories, you're hearing how they're impacted, and being able to actually reflect that from whatever position I would be sitting in, or whoever the leader is sitting in, is important. Just being able to listen and reflect that, hey, you're being heard, your input is being considered, is one of the key things there. And then kind of off of Gilda's point as well, being able to work in a group dynamic where you understand that maybe your answers or solutions aren't 100% right, or everybody is not going to go with them. Being able to take that with a grain of salt and realize that we are all on the same team and advocating, hopefully at least, for the same goals in our community here in Durango. So I think both of those are very important traits in leaders, and I think those are some strong suits of my own. So thank you.
You're muted, Karen.
All right, I just unmuted, and thank you, Carter. And Doug. Question 1.
Okay, I think there's a lot of specific skills and traits that sometimes I'm not good at looking at other people's skills, although it's good if people can have communication skills, that they're able to work with each other, be able to work with each other and other people is really important. Being able to look at issues from different points of view is critical. Sorry, I'm just, my brain just kind of went. Being able to look at issues. Sorry, I'm just fluttering on this one.
That's okay. It was just asking what skills do you bring to the table?
My skills. I have problem solving skills. I'm able to look at things at different perspectives, different views. I'm willing to listen to other people's other people's perspectives. I like learning new things, which can be scary to some people.
Okay,
Sorry, that's it.
that's good. Hey, the next one is Harrison Wendt. Question 1.
So it's no doubt that governing is hard. And I think one of the key things with governing is the ability to evolve, the ability to listen to your community and change your perspective and your answers on things when you learn more. And that is crucial to being a human and to being a governing body. And as I said, you know, I think there's 5 words that are really important here: compassion, collaboration, trust, and accountability, and the ability to evolve. It's time for collaboration, and we must find viable solutions to create change that serves the best interests of our community. The only way we can achieve that is through deep listening, active involvement, and solid teamwork. So we really must find that common ground and serve our community in the way they deserve. It's also time for trust and accountability. When a community member or a stakeholder or a local organization or governmental entity brings an issue to our council, they deserve to feel heard. It is time for Durango to have leadership that they can trust. I think that these are all key things for a city councilor to have. These are all very important. Compassion brings a sense of understanding for different people and where different people come from. Collaboration, you can work with other people, you can work with other governmental agencies or entities, and that trust. It's imperative that our community trusts the leaders that they elect, and that's through accountability. And I am prepared to bring that to Durango City Council. Thank you.
Excellent. That was a good first round. Our second question is pretty big. It's in the chat. It's all about affordable housing. And I made an addition because someone brought up a really good piece of it, which is the minimum wage. So there's 2 blocks on this one question in the chat. You can choose to answer one deeply and not the rest. This is just a bunch of stuff about affordable housing. So it's up to each candidate how many pieces of that they want to address.
Read it too.
What?
Read it.
Oh,
for folks
Kirby
on the
says I
phone.
should read it. Affordable housing is of course, we're hearing that everywhere. And the definition of affordable is my pet peeve, is we really haven't talked about that. How can the city continue to support mobile home parks in the city, look for opportunities on city-owned land to create another park or more parks? Easiest opportunity to create affordable housing for many. That's one part. Outside pressure on the real estate market is exacerbating the affordable housing issue. What, if anything, would you do to impact this trend? What role do you believe the city should play in fostering sustainable economic development in our community? And what are your priorities in this regard? How do you propose to provide a stable source of funding for the city to partner with developers on workforce housing? And then the addition is about minimum wage, which makes housing unaffordable in Durango. The Colorado Wage Claim Act allows municipalities now to set their own minimum wage above the state minimum. What's your position on creating a higher minimum wage for Durango workers? And the first one to answer this will be Gilda.
Well, thank you. It's a big question. Affordable housing and how it applies to Durango. I think that the city should continue to support the mobile home parks. You know, the first step would be to identify more suitable parcels that the city may partner with private agencies, maybe individuals, to purchase land and proceed with trying to see if it's possible to put up workforce housing. That would be probably the quickest and easiest route at this point to provide affordable housing for our workforce. I also do think a component of that is also maybe looking at the issue of a managed camp. That's an issue that we could look into and see if that could be possible. But affordable housing has been made unattainable by the rising cost of real estate in the city. And so we might look at ways to offset the costs either through building credits or partnership with the state and possibly county to see if there's any money available to lower the price of real estate. And also, I do think that we need to explore all kinds of revenue that would help attain affordable housing. We have a large oops, sorry, I missed your yellow sign.
Carter Rogers, you're next up on question 2.
Thank you. So first part I want to hit on this is about Colorado minimum wage law. I think it is definitely something that City Council should consider. whether it be prior to this upcoming election or after our new councilors are elected. And it's important when having that conversation that we bring in as many stakeholders as we can, specifically our small business owners here in Durango, to see potentially what impact it would have on their business finances with an increased minimum wage here in Durango. And I just want to be clear on what that law actually states here in the state of Colorado. It allows for municipalities to increase the minimum wage within a 15% range of the previous fiscal year's minimum wage for the state of Colorado. So we couldn't increase it, say, 100% or whatever. We have to stay in that 15% boundary. But nevertheless, I would support that idea, but I think it's also important to get input from our business owners in Durango. And to the second part on housing affordability, I've been a strong proponent of this my entire campaign, and I will continue to advocate for this. And that is extending the regulations that already exist here in Durango on our vacation rentals and our policy surrounding vacation rentals in Durango. And this kind of plays into the strain and pressure that's put on our been put on our housing market here in Durango. So what I'm proposing is extending our regulations from 2nd and 3rd Avenues, which are current existing regulations, to include all of our zones within Durango. And the idea behind that is if we free up some available stock in Durango, it's going to ease up some pressure on the housing market and hopefully start to ease some of the strain that we're seeing when it comes to finding rental units or housing units in general. So that's a really big piece of my campaign, and thank you.
Thank you, Carter. Next, Doug Snow about housing.
If you would please, Douglas, not Doug. Housing has always been affordable housing has always been an issue here in Durango. And it will always be an issue into the future and further. There needs to be definitely something that needs to be done, perhaps for some of the further development to be able to develop more affordable housing. The city may need to step in and take on the role of the general contractor, and then by them being the general contractor, they are able to dictate what jobs, or not jobs, which building projects can be dedicated towards low income, middle income, or even anywhere in between. Just because I've heard that there are sometimes issues with the contractors. Well, if you're a contractor, you're wanting to try to make as good of a profit as what you can. So that tends to draw away from low income. I'd like to touch quickly on the raising the minimum wage. There is a big disconnect between state, local, and federal minimum wage, which should be dealt with before we start raising our minimum wage, because by raising the minimum wage, it actually bumps the lower people that are in assistance from the government.
All right, thank you, Douglas. I'll get your name right in the future. I'm sorry. The next one would be Harrison Wendt on question 2.
Affordable housing is a complex issue, and it takes someone who has the political will and courage to get these things done. We need to look at, I think continuing to look at mobile home parks as an opportunity is very important. Number one step could be annexing West Side Mobile Home Park into the city of Durango so they can start using city utilities. And then working with the county on finding space or land for more development of mobile home parks. We don't have a lot of land here in Durango to use in terms of city-owned land. But we can start talking about the importance of infill and maybe reducing the lot size requirements for ADUs, accessory dwelling units in Durango. We also need to start looking at the fair share program that's was implemented in 2009 by the city of Durango. Right now, they're asking that 16% of new developments have affordable housing units, or you can pay your way out of it. I would be in favor of raising that 16% minimum for a new fair share program. There also needs to be an increased focus on that 60 to 80% area median income. 80% of the area median income right now, I believe, is $59,000. I'm well below that, and a lot of my friends are well below that. And we need to focus on that 60 to 80 and rental. There's a lot of people who are far out from home ownership, so 60 to 80 rental is really important. This is a complex issue, and it takes the political courage. Sorry.
Mhm. All right, we are ready. That's a good point about the area median income. Our next question is about climate
Thank you.
change.
Karen, I think you have one more speaker for this question.
Oh, I gotta fix this. Okay, so Dave Woodruff, thank you for making me aware of that. Dave Woodruff on question 2, affordable housing.
Thank you, Whit, for letting me jump in here. So I'm gonna try to fit in as much as I can in 2 minutes, but I'm gonna kind of go off of where Harrison kind of left off with area median income. Too often, I think we use affordable housing and workforce housing as buzzwords. We need to really start defining what does that mean and how do we best address the situation. You know, and I think it's going to take public-private partnerships. So meaning we, as a city, work with the private sector to find viable solutions. You know, case in point, we can build on the successes of what the current city council has done. The Best Western, they have 120 units that are in process of being revamped or built new that focuses on that 30% to 60% AMI. So not necessarily going to be long-term housing, but it could definitely be transitional housing where we can get people that are in there for 6 months or a year to where they can be on their own 2 feet and be able to, you know, get something further down the road. I think that we can also look at deed restrictions as an opportunity for implementing some core policies and strategies to make sure that whenever we do have inventory come on board, it's not going to receive that market fluctuation near so much as what we've seen during the last 5 years. Durango media home sales in 2022 for Durango is $762,000 for a single family home. That's unaffordable for many of us in Durango, myself included. So it's important that we look at different ways to address both workforce and affordable housing. We need to just also boost all inventory, not just purchase inventory, but we also need to boost rental inventory. So having a good prospectus on how we look at both of those to make sure that we're kind of addressing all the needs. We also talk about that missing middle, that 80% to 120% AMI, and how do we address that? Thank you.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Dave. Our next question is about climate change, and that's in the chat. Is the city of Durango doing enough to address climate change? If anything, what would you propose to do differently or in addition? What are the specific opportunities you see to mitigate climate change for Durango? And we're going to start with Carter Rogers.
Sweet. So when it comes to if the city of Durango is doing enough to address climate change, I've reviewed the city strategic plan for environmental sustainability, and I would actually counter and push back and say that we really need to take a serious look at what we're forcing on the residents of Durango, and more specifically, I'm speaking to bans on natural gas use of appliances in residential properties. However, I do support perhaps changing from natural gas utilities in our commercial zones, I don't think that's something we should be pushing on the individual residents of Durango, because we're going to start running into issues where if we begin to regulate our utility usage, such as natural gas, we're going to see cost increases when it comes to rentals or building new residential properties. So those regulations will cause more of a barrier for our residents here in Durango. But further building onto this, in 2022, Durango had one of the earliest snow melts on record. And so I think that the city definitely needs to maybe prioritize climate sustainability, environmental sustainability a little bit higher than what they've currently been doing in terms of sustainability initiatives. And with that, I will stop. Thank you.
Thanks, Carter. Next is Douglas Snow on climate change.
Okay, climate change in Durango. There's only really a couple of issues that I can see. The biggest one is the forest fires that we've been having over the last 20 years. That's one of the biggest climate change issues for Durango. I know that Durango started doing some fire mitigation work last year around the outskirts of town, which, that's a good priority for us to be working on, trying to mitigate fire risks around the area. The other climate change would be the winters have been getting less and less since I have been living here. So we haven't been having as heavy of snowfalls as year to year. It seems to be that they're drug out to where, it's like every 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 years when we actually start having, a really heavy winter. So, those are the only really specific climate change issues that I am aware of at the moment that Durango is facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Next, Harrison Wendt on climate change.
Climate change is real. We most of us know that, and I truly believe that it is the city of Durango's job to help mitigate this climate crisis. In 2022, the city adopted a new sustainability plan with 4 unique goals: reduce the city's carbon footprint, increase availability of renewable energy, improve the quality and resiliency of natural resources through conservation and effective management, and provide solid waste disposal that is oriented toward recycle and reuse. It'll be my responsibility as your city councilor to help combat our climate crisis through new and innovative ways. I think we need to start looking at involving other governmental entities into this conversation. NINAR, the county, Mercy, Fort Lewis College. How can we all work towards the same goal so that we're all working and getting to the end result that we would like to see? We need to continue our focus in energy, transportation and development patterns and consumption and waste and natural systems and ecology. If we don't start investing in climate now, we will see the results of it, and we already are 10 years from now. We will pay the cost eventually. And so it's imperative we start dealing with these issues now. As for the one-man show that's happening in our department at the city right now, I would be in favor of maybe exploring a new board or commission that would involve some community members to help alleviate some of the stress from the one-man show that we're seeing at the city's office right now. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Dave Woodruff.
Thank you. So again, I'm going to expand on Harrison's sustainability plan comment, especially as done by the city. the city of Durango has set local targets of 30% reduction in greenhouse emissions by 2030, 80% reductions by 2050, and established a goal of 50% renewable electricity supply by 2030 and 100% renewable supply by 2050. So this is already put into place by the existing council and councils before that. So how do we expand on that? I guess I'm more in terms of where the rubber meets the road. And instead of talking about ideology and what we could do, I think there's some really cool things that we could do that there's some low hanging fruit that I think that we could implement. Right now, we currently have some electric vehicle charging stations that are existing. We can expand that. There's a couple in town. There's a couple of private entities that are, I think, in process of building electric vehicle charging stations. So if we start expanding that EV charging station infrastructure, it's going to incentivize people hopefully to buy more electric vehicles. That's probably the easiest and quickest way to start reducing emissions. But it's also the chicken and the egg. Are people going to buy electric cars because we have more stations, or are we going to we're going to build more stations in order for people to buy the cars? So I think either way, there's a way to move the needle there. Expanding our transit system will also help offset greenhouse gas emissions. So expanding transit systems, loops, that sort of thing. Supporting and incentivizing electric vehicle sales, and that may not be necessarily happen at the local level, but certainly at the regional, state, and federal level. Prioritizing clean transportation is easy to do. And then lastly, expanding the bike and trail system to help subsidize car usage. So if we expand the Durango Animas River Trail all the way to Three Springs, that might incentivize people to actually come from Three Springs and either commute via bike or by foot into town. Thank you.
Excellent. Next is Gilda on question 3, climate change.
All righty, the points made by Harrison and Dave don't need to be repeated. Those are excellent points. Okay, so climate change is here, and our local governments need to play a huge role in addressing this. Sustainability measures need to be baked into our planning codes and building codes, also our transportation plans, and really every aspect of city government. The city can and should take strong positions advocating for state and federal policies and standards to reduce carbon emissions from vehicles. We could go ahead and get some more grants to put in more charging stations. We can look at transportation out to Three Springs and back by bus and bike, pedal. Some of the opportunities that Durango has to mitigate climate change would be reducing the risk of wildfires through creating defensible space in the wildland-urban interface, requiring standards that reduce residential and business water use. We need to caretake our watershed. Educating citizens about the need to reduce car trips, expanding on solar. There's plenty we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilda. Our next question is, I just put it in the chat. It's on homelessness, which is a thorny problem we've had here for a while. Are you willing to designate a place for homeless people to camp and or a managed camp? Where are you on the 2020 strategic plan done with the county related to homelessness? And you can expand however you want. The first person on this will be Douglas Snow.
Okay, thank you. This is something that, I really want to talk about. I am willing to help find a location for there to be a homeless camp, although I don't really want to call it a homeless camp because the idea that I have is being drawn from some of our past history. We used to have a lot of mining around here, and we would have tent cities that would be located near the minds. So the idea is we establish a camp area that gets surveyed out by the city. It gets set up in grids to where there can be an address for the different places. And then we get a temporary zip code to apply to the camp. Then with having that temporary zip code, the residents of the camp would technically not be homeless. It might be able to help remove that stigmata of being homeless and camping. There could be a possibility that it would help them to be able to get work, because then it makes it more reliable for them to have steady employment, and they are not having to worry about is their stuff still going to be there when they come back from working. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Douglas. Our next is Harrison Wendt.
So ignoring homelessness doesn't solve the problem, and criminalizing homelessness does not solve the problem. We need to start addressing the root causes of this, and that's addressed in the 2020 strategic plan. So we're looking at housing affordability. We're looking at addiction resources. What resources do we have? And then we're also looking at mental health resources. Do we have the proper resources for these things? I would be willing to discuss and perhaps develop a managed camp in Durango, but we need to look at the basic infrastructure needs for this area that we would be talking about. Do we have proper transportation? And do we have the proper, utilities needed for this to happen? I think that every human, regardless of where they're coming from, deserves to have dignity and shelter, and that is a core belief of mine. Of course, this conversation is going to take a robust. We have to discuss it with as many stakeholders and community members as we can, and a continued partnership with the county is crucial in this. And unfortunately, I think that we just haven't been able to find the right solutions. But again, we need someone who has the political courage and the political will to get these things done. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, next is Dave Woodruff.
Thank you. As we all know, this is an incredibly complex and complicated issue. There is no one size fits all approach here. We're going to have to be proactive in figuring out what's going to work out best for our situation. I think the first thing that we need to do is to lead with humanity and lead with compassion. It's important that we do keep dignity high of mind when dealing with this issue. The 2020 strategic plan between the city and the county gave us a really good framework of what we could do and what some workable solutions are. As we know, not all of them were able to come to bear fruit, but we have the gift of hindsight to be able to look back and see what did work and then what we could do and strategies to implement moving forward. Purple Cliffs, as we know, was an impromptu camp. It wasn't necessarily designed to be a managed camp. It was people were evacuated there when the Alavita area was evacuated from the fire. They were evacuated to Escalante, and then they just kind of made a camp out there. So the drawback of having that managed camp and kind of making an impromptu camp is that it took $370,000 in counting to clean up that site. A lot of biohazardous material, potential booby traps. There's a lot going on there that we could do better. Again, hindsight being 2020. So what do we do post Purple Cliffs? Post Purple Cliffs, I think we have the opportunity now to really look at what our mental health capacity is and what we could do for mental health resources moving forward. That is an area of opportunity for our community. Secondarily, again, I agree, transportation services schedules and routes could be more robust. And then better addiction treatment and prevention. You know, the Mercy is looking at an 80,000 square foot facility to be built over the next 5 years. Is there a way to work in collaboration with them to provide some of the services that we need in our community? Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. The next on this issue is Gilda.
Yes, I'm willing to designate a managed camp that goes along with the 2020 strategic plan that was compiled by all the stakeholders who worked on it diligently for a lot of time and a lot of hours. You know, the current situation with individual or group camps that are along the river trail now on the outskirts of Durango doesn't serve anybody well. In the summer, they pose a fire threat. They also pose a human health threat. A managed camp would provide, say, a bathroom, shower, cooking facilities, which are essential to people looking for jobs. Along with that, we could provide, you know, social and mental health services. We could see how transportation might be routed up to the camp. But mainly, the city needs to work in partnership with the county and all organizations who truly want to find a way to provide services for a managed camp. So basically, the city has to get on board to work with partners to move this issue forward. And that's what I'm willing to do when I get on city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilda. Carter Rogers, same question, homelessness.
Awesome. So very similarly to what all the other candidates have already stated, I think that the 2020 strategic plan that has been created is a great starting point. However, unlike some of the candidates, I'm not willing to have a discussion on whether or not Durango needs a managed camp. I'm already ready and actively committing to the fact that Durango does need a managed camp here for our homeless residents. And that begins, I believe, first with repairing our relationships with our county and state officials, especially after the repeated broken promises of our city council to county and state officials. I think the entire Purple Cliff situation was just really bad and reflected very poorly on our city leaders, and the fact that we still, to this day, do not have a managed camp in place for our homeless residents of Durango. And further, I still don't think that the city's going far enough in giving our homeless residents a fair shot at the game here in Durango. And so that's why I am an active proponent of reallocating some funding from the lodger's tax, which Durango residents passed, to be able to provide some form of employment for homeless residents who should seek that through the city, because the lodger's tax is a tax that everyday residents in Durango don't pay. It's the tourists that pay for that tax. So why can't we use some of those funds to kind of help our homeless residents here in Durango get up and back on their feet and participating in our community again? Thank you.
Thank you, Carter. I have a follow-up question that's related to housing and homelessness, and it's a question I just put in the chat from Susan O'Leary. Do the candidates know about Durango's Urban Renewal District program, which is already in effect? Utilizing this tool, the city has identified parcels that the city can partner with developers to ensure that if the candidates, to identify how the city can partner with developers. If the candidates don't know about this, it's a red flag. Same with the city's vacation rental policy. Short-term rentals are limited citywide. So, and does anyone want to make a comment on that? It's not really a...
I'll take it first.
Okay.
Yes. So Actually, I would push back a little bit on that statement slash question and say if you go to the City of Durango's website, they are very open in the fact that established neighborhoods 1 and established neighborhood 2 are the only actual zones in Durango that have actual number caps on the amount of vacation rentals that operate within Durango city limits as a permit process through the city. So all the other active vacation rentals aren't permitted, but they are active and operating in Durango. And it's because they are not required through that regulation to go through that permit process. And so that's all I will say on that.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about that either. Does anyone else have anything to add? Any of the candidates? I mean,
Just quickly, I think urban renewal authorities are a good way to boost the public-private partnerships to not only develop sales tax revenue, but to encourage growth within certain areas of the city. I guess I was under the impression that we only have 125 vacation rentals that were allowed in the city of Durango. I know there's roughly 12 or 1,300 throughout the entire La Plata County. But I guess I could be getting my statistics wrong and I may be looking at the wrong spot, but I thought that it was capped. And so I think there's a way in terms of just looking at vacation rentals and boosting inventory, taxing some of those entities, not as a property tax, but more as a commercial property tax or a personal property tax. So instead of that 7%, now you're taxing them at 29%. That has them, because they're operating a business out of that residence, allows them to kind of pay a fair share. Why should the hotels and motels pay 29% for short-term lodging and not the vacation rentals? So just an avenue that we can discuss further down the road.
yeah, that's interesting.
Can I add quick?
Yeah.
I do know of the URA and the important work they do, and especially their work to revitalize Midtown. And then just a little comment on the short-term rentals. When discussing with the city, they are very limited. I think that what we can do as a city is start cracking down on the illegal short-term rental units. I think yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Mhm. All right, Gilda, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. All these questions are very complicated. I am aware of the URAs, but with the rental market here in Durango, a lot of people, we need to remember this. A lot of people buy their homes with the intention of supplementing their mortgage through the rental of an apartment or a convenience apartment to make sure they can make their mortgage because of the price of homes here. So that's one point we got to remember, that some people moved here just to do that. And that's all.
There's a couple things in the chat about housing, the impact of second homes owned by non-residents. I don't know if we need to really go around the table. That's a big issue, and I'm glad someone brought it up. And then someone else said, crack down on illegal vacation rentals and watch the housing market correct itself. Good point. And then someone asked about the homeless. Let's see, the homeless issue that we had in question 4. They wanted to add where to have the camp is the issue. And I don't know. I think that all 5 of you candidates, I can't imagine that you have an expectation of knowing where it would be. But if anybody does, go ahead and raise your hand. And I know that's a really big issue that's being worked on. Dave, any other?
Yeah, I can't say specifically if we know exactly where it's going to be, but I will know that being a part of some of those conversations on the county and city level, they're looking at 42 different sites. Is there potential within those 42? Maybe, I don't know, but or maybe none of them will work, and we have to kind of go back to the drawing board. But That tells me that there's a robust strategy in place to look at every possible opportunity for a possible managed camp. So I think that's a good place to start. And then we'll have to work around some of those solutions to work out their viability, short and both long term.
Good information. We have one last question, which I didn't know if we'd have time for. It's a broadband.
Karen?
Broadband access. What do the city do to help increase better broadband accessibility to all those in our region? And we can start with Harrison on that.
So research suggests that the social returns to investment in broadband are significant, and increasing access and usage of broadband infrastructure in rural areas can lead to increased job and population growth, higher rates of new business formation, and lower unemployment rates. At this point, this would take like a really robust conversation with stakeholders, the private sector, and everyone else. But I think that there's an opportunity to discuss a public utility here. It's not something that I know too much about, and so I can't necessarily say whether I'm totally in favor of that route. But I think that we could discuss that just based on how important it is. Like I said, broadband expansion can also improve health and life outcomes, offering access to remote healthcare providers, online social networks, and educational opportunities. There was a cost-benefit analysis of the broadband installation in Indiana, and it observed that 3- to 4-fold returns on investment, not including state and local governments' cost saving on medical expenditures and additional tax revenues from increased incomes.
Thank you. Dave?
So again, I'm kind of a where the rubber meets the road candidate. And so, you can kind of look and look at what historically has been done over the last 6 months to a year. Right now, Plata County is working on a $4 million project to connect Pagosa and Durango with fiber. Specifically, this project will go along Highway 151, connecting just outside of, where was it? Chimney Rock, and to connect Ignacio. The Southern Ute Tribe is underway with building broadband connectivity along Highway 172. CDOT eventually is hoping to bring fiber from Wolf Creek all the way down to Durango along Highway 160, but that's still got a long way out. So some of these other smaller projects will give those larger projects legs and to be able to get fiber and broadband access to the masses. The Plata County committed roughly $500,000 in May of last year of COVID funds to get that project up and running and get it up to speed. Region 9 is also working hard to get grant funding to help that project. So what I think we're looking at is how do we expand not just Durango, but how do we get this be more of a regional impact? To Harrison's point, we can talk about all day long about what the impacts. That's no secret. And I think it's important to look at why we need broadband just beyond being able to stream Hulu and Netflix. But what that does for not from just from a personal standpoint, but also from an economic viability standpoint. Jonas Hjort with the World Bank wrote a blog discussing the economic impacts of broadband access in developing countries. So that might be a little bit 6 degrees of separation, but I think there's a lot of things that we can still apply here. Better digital connectivity can affect the productivity of firms, workers, and other inputs in the production process. In addition to on the demand side, to improve access to markets with better connectivity is going to help us in the medium and long term. Thank you.
Great. The next one, Gilda on broadband.
Okay, I agree with what was said on a larger regional aspect, but the question to me is, what can the city do to better increase broadband accessibility to those here? Okay, broadband is a necessity in today's world. We need to work with the school district, the county, businesses to identify where the gaps are, and we need to improve the broadband infrastructure. So we could do that by maybe making a requirement that it is included in building plans And if they do any underground renovations to utilities, we put in lines there that may be accessed in the future. But it is a gap that has been exposed through COVID because people were having a lot of trouble logging on and there wasn't a big bandwidth so they could accommodate all the different computers on at one time. Even at my home right here, I had to reboot my internet service to make sure I didn't black out during this broadcast. So I'm going to leave that up to the IT people and the people who are well trained in how to make broadband work better for the city. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gilda. Next, Carter on broadband.
Awesome. So I'm going to actually defer back to my time in Oklahoma before moving here to Durango, where I was the network administrator for a municipality, the town of Ralston. And I was actually able to go into there with the plan of connecting the citizens of that municipality with broadband because no broadband providers even serviced the area at the time. The citizens were still dealing with dial-up connections essentially, which is just not something you should have to do in the 21st century. However, what I was able to do with that is really turn that broadband initiative that the city took on. They bought their own radio equipment, utilized some of their water towers and other cell towers around the city, and actually paid AT&T to run a fiber line from a neighboring fiber line where they were able to feed the connection for that. But the city was able to actually turn that into a very steady and reliable revenue source as well. I definitely have experience in broadband access and developing that for a municipality. And I think it's something that's a definite must-have because it will also further encourage our local broadband providers to have better competition and just better practices as businesses in general, which will only continue to advocate for progress when it comes to broadband accessibility in Durango. So, thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Carter. Next is Douglas Snow.
What were we talking about again?
The broadband question, what can the city do to help increase better broadband accessibility to all those in our region?
Okay, well, to start with, being able to get funds for projects so that we can actually do more to get broadband out to people. Like Dave mentioned, there's already projects in effect right now, but I noticed that there was a new article in the Herald how Lauren Boebert is now going to be looking at earmarks for the area. So perhaps we can sit down and submit some sort of proposals to her for her to submit to Congress so that we could get some additional funds so that we could get some more projects going, because everything is going to internet-based services these days. You know, everything's going online. So basically everybody needs to have broadband internet. And if we do not have broadband internet for everybody in the county, it's going to leave a lot of people behind.
All right, thank you. We have time for your closing statements, and then I'll give a couple announcements. And everybody that's, while you're waiting, you can copy the next forums. I put the next three, let's see, we have 4 more forums. One's tomorrow, and then the next is March 14th and 15th in the chat, so you can come to those. So we'll do closing statements, and in our randomizing, let's start with Dave Woodruff.
All right, I'll take it. Save the best for first. Yeah, sorry, Harrison. Yeah, I just I'm very passionate about my community. I moved here in 2005 thinking that this was just going to be a blip on the radar in my Colorado tour. But when I came here, instead of finding a place to live and a community to be in, I found a home, and I found a great, incredible network of people that I've come to love and have really built and instilled my community and my family here. Having children, 8.5 and a 7-year-old, and a wonderful wife in Durango, I do indeed have a very vested interest in the future of Durango and how it shapes over the next 10, 20, 30 years. It would be easy to say, man, I'm really only looking forward to the next 4 or 8 years during my tenure in city council. But what I think we can do is look forward to the next 10, 20, 30 years. What generational impacts can we make today to be able to create a legacy that we're all proud of further down the road? What's the saying? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So right now we can really move the needle on a lot of really cool things to be able to give us the opportunity to be 20, 30 years down the road and be like, oh man, we really made some impacts. My dad and cousin always say, I'd rather be looking at it than looking for it. So when we're talking about housing inventory, we're talking about tools in the garage. It's better to have those assets available to make sure that they're ready they're ready for whenever the time comes. So thank you so much for everybody for suffering through my diatribe, and I look forward to serving you in council. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave Woodruff. Next is Gilda, your closing statement.
Well, first of all, thank you for having this forum, and thank you to all the people in attendance. I'm going to keep mine short. I'm running for Durango City Council to help move the agenda forward for the future. You know, I'm real concerned about preserving our natural resources for future generations. I believe my work experience and my background will help contribute to the discussion around these topics and also help in making decisions for the city of Durango. I am ready to get to work on addressing these issues for Durango, and I look forward to earning your vote. So thank you. That's all.
All right, thank you, Gilda. Next, Carter Rogers, closing statement.
Thank you. So I just want to make clear again that to anybody watching here in Durango or watching this on YouTube in the future, we are at a point of really important decisions to be made in this upcoming election. Are we going to continue to elect city leaders who continually push, brush, and dismiss the needs of the working class here in Durango and the long established residents and families of Durango to the side in lieu of generating more growth for our tourism market? Or are we going to elect city leaders who actually take our citizen and residents' concerns to heart and act and to find common ground solutions and improvements to quality of life for residents in Durango? And I would argue that I'm one of the best shots for Durango at the moment, and you can find more out about my campaign at www.cdrfordgo.com. Please reach out. I am so excited to be running in this election, and it's been great so far. And again, I just want to express my thanks to the club for hosting today's forum and for all the attendees being civically engaged. So thank you all.
Thank you, Carter. Next, Douglas, your closing statement.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity for me to speak here. I would like to be able to help out Durango as much as I can and give back to the community that I grew up in, and to help build a better Durango for everybody. I would also like to propose the possibility of starting a bus route between Durango, Aztec, and Farmington, because having public transportation between Aztec and Farmington and Durango would be very beneficial. I've heard that, a lot of people have actually moved from Durango down to Aztec and even to Farmington. So the more that we can do for the community to make Durango more inclusive and to make Durango more of a old time community to have would be very beneficial for everybody. And I thank you for your time and your support.
Thanks, Douglas. Our last candidate closing statement from Harrison Wendt.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you again to the club, and then thank you to all the residents of Durango for choosing to be here and choosing to be civically engaged. The next 10 years will be crucial for Durango. Decisions are going to need to be made on many key issues: infrastructure, housing, growth, all of which are key components of my campaign. And our housing crisis is teetering on a precipice, and we need to act aggressively to address the issues that are impacting our community, which is lack of affordable housing and inventory. I believe the city has made great strides to address this growing crisis. And should I be elected, I will work to collaborate with other governmental agencies in the city and county. We need a robust plan that centers our essential workers: firefighters, medical personnel, teachers, support professionals, retail, hospitality, food service, and law enforcement. Our vibrant community cannot thrive if Durango isn't sustainable for our essential workers and our college students. And I believe we need leadership that approaches the job with compassion, with collaboration, and a willingness to listen and learn. Personally, I've lived with my own housing insecurities, and I have struggled to put food on the table. That's just a reality for many people in our community. And my lived experience is a reflection of that. It's time for a new generation of leadership, and it's time to reimagine Durango to be accessible and inclusive and sustainable for everyone. And I humbly ask for your support on April 4th. And for more information, please reach out to, or please visit harrisonfordurango.com. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for the closing statements. Each of you can go to the chat and put your websites in, and that way everybody on the call can get those. Tomorrow night, for all the people who wanted to hear more about housing and more about homelessness, tomorrow night's Zoom is from 6 to 8, and it's sponsored by NINA, which is Neighbors in Need Alliance. And that's up in the chat, and you go to ninadurango.org to register for the link, and they'll send it to you via email. And then next week, the Chamber of Commerce is having a lunch. You have to pay for that, so you go register for that. And on the 15th, the League of Women Voters is going to have a forum downtown at 5 o'clock at the Center for Innovation in the downtown Main Mall. And they'll also be streaming it on Zoom. So the link will be at the League of Women Voters, laplata.org. And I hope we focused on certain issues, and we're not going to cover it all because there's people putting stuff in the chat. And I know you might not feel heard, but we stuck to those issues and our candidates got to talk about it. So I really thank you all for showing up. Our next club is April 4th, and that's going to be about healthcare. I put that in the Zoom as well. And then the one in May will be the LPEA candidates forum. So that's coming up too. La Plata County Dem always needs volunteers. I have that in the chat, and laplatadem's.org is our website to sign up for things. It's a lot of fun. So please keep an eye out for our emails announcing our next Zoom luncheon. And let's give a big virtual round of applause for all our city council candidates. This is hard. They've got a lot of work ahead of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.